네, 버나드 케인과 함께하는 진짜 미국 주식 시간입니다. 오늘은 이번 주 화요일에 말씀드렸던 쇼피파이에 대한 이야기 이어가 볼 텐데요. 아마존의 뒤를 잇는 대형 유통 플랫폼입니다. 자, 오늘은 실적과 앞으로 경영 소유권에 대해서 이야기 나눠볼 텐데요. 어떤 식으로 운영되고 있나요?
Toby Lupke is the founder of Shopify. Shopify is headquartered in Ottawa, Ontario, in Canada. And he's got a really interesting story. How did he start this company? What happened? Well, Toby was a programmer, and he wanted to make money separate from his programming work. So he wanted to, and he was a big surfer. Not snowboard, snowboard surfer, I'm sorry. And what he wanted to do was build an online presence that he could sell surfboards to. And he called it Snow Devil. Well, at the time in 2004 when he started to do this, he found it almost impossible to do. He got so frustrated that he said, I'm going to build my own platform to be able to get this done. And that's how Shopify got formed. He owns 10 million shares. And if you think about it, the stock price is $1,500. So 10 million times $1,500, he's got a lot on the line financially. He has a $15 billion stake in the company, of which he currently owns. He personally owns 33% of the voting stock, and management as a whole owns 56% of the stock. That's what we talk about when we talk about a committed founder. And another example of his commitment, during COVID, Toby took a pay cut and he took his salary down to $1. Okay? It's more and more evidence of someone that is thinking long term. And what I want to think about is not that he can make this presence felt in terms of growth, from 4 billion to 153 billion of a total addressable market. But he's such a forward thinker that we don't know exactly where Shopify is going to be over the course of the next, say, 5 years, 10 years. They may expand and they may build out, just like we didn't know what Amazon was going to be like. Amazon started out as the bookseller and then did Amazon Music and electronics, and we never really thought about them in terms of Amazon Web Services or Amazon Prime. So let's just look at the stock performance and the revenue growth. This first chart right here shows revenue, gross profits, and then operating income. And you can see that we only started to make operating income over the course of the last couple years. These are quarterly numbers. And you can see how growth was growing in revenue, and then what happened due to the pandemic, revenue exploded. And I think there's going to be, once you start this process going, I think it's a self-feeding process. When we look at the company's stock price performance over the last 5 years, it's, if I did this on a logarithmic chart, and I probably should have done that, it still went up a lot between end of 2016 through 2020, but it has really accelerated since then. When I look at the last, say this is just after the pandemic started, and we can see, and I've taken the first couple of months of the pandemic out, and I started looking at it from June of 2020. And right now it looks like, Shopify's outperforming the NASDAQ as a whole, the blue line, and Shopify is the black line, but not significantly, maybe by 20%. But 20% over 2 years is still pretty good. But if I go back and I pull that back from the end of 2019, now look at how far Shopify outperformed. So what happened? Astute investors saw the pandemic and they saw people were going to need to get that online presence because their stores closed, and that stock exploded between March and June of 2020. That's what caused this stock now to be basically 330% stock appreciation since the end of 2019 versus about 92% for the NASDAQ market as a whole. When I take a look like I always do and I compare the stock performance, which is the top clip of Shopify on a weekly basis, and I compare that to the bottom clip, which is Shopify compared to the NASDAQ, okay? What we can see here is interesting. We can see how during that period to the early 2000 to mid 2020, the stock market went up. Shopify clearly outperformed the stock market, and so we've got both arrows pointing up. Shopify stock price performance pointing up and Shopify's outperformance of the NASDAQ. But what we've seen lately is that Shopify is just a market performer in the last year and a quarter, something like that, maybe almost a year and a half. And what we can see is on the bottom clip, we've just kind of chopped around. We haven't really gone down, we haven't really gone up. But yet the stock has gone up because the market's gone up. And so Shopify has only gone up with respect to the market. I still believe that this stock is going to appreciate substantially over the next 3 to 5 years. And we want to be able to find opportunities to get into that growth.
네, 항상 좀 장기적인 모멘텀을 가지고 종목을 바라봐 주시는데 3년에서 5년 사이에 성장할 수 있다고 내다보셨습니다. 그렇다면 5년 동안 얼마나 성장할 수 있는지도 한번 짚어주시죠.
I definitely think so. We have to watch it because they've grown so much. But when I have a founder that's active in management in the company and owns $15 billion worth of stock, and he's a young guy, I think there's tremendous potential to increase those revenues. He has only cared for the customers that are on Shopify and let that platform make him money. But the reason that platform is so good is because the customers love it, and he has very little competition, relatively speaking. He's built something that's really easy to operate if you're a merchant. The other thing is that if we can just continue to look for that extra revenue growth, that acceleration of revenue growth with an investor, with a founder that owns $15 billion worth of stock, so he's so committed, we'll find those 3 to 4 times, maybe 5 to 10 times outperformance like we've had over the last 4 to 5 years.
네, 오늘은 쇼피파이라는 종목에 대해서 살펴봤습니다. 앞으로 성장성이 다분한 그런 종목이라고 하니까 미국 증시에서 눈여겨서 지켜보시기 바라겠고요. 문자 받는 사람 샵 0082번에 버니의 미국 주식이라고 전송해 주시면 이런 이야기들 방송 외에도 나눠보실 수가 있습니다.